General Hospital spoilers tease that the engagement ceremony of Steve Burton and his girlfriend Michelle Lundstrom, which should have been a sweet and sacred milestone in their lives, unexpectedly turned into an emotional disaster. And all because of one name, Sherry Burton, Steve's ex-wife, someone he once believed was a closed chapter in his life. But like a lingering ghost, Sherry hasn't just refused to disappear from Steve's world. She's returned with a new wave of destruction that shook the entire atmosphere of the ceremony and upended the carefully laid plans Steve and Michelle had been quietly working on for months. Despite always choosing to keep their relationship private and limit public appearances to protect each other from harsh scrutiny, there comes a time when love needs to be acknowledged, needs a clear milestone. This engagement ceremony was meant to symbolize their growth and mark a fresh beginning built on mutual understanding, quiet support, and peace. But that tranquility was torn apart in a flash when Sherry unexpectedly reappeared, not necessarily in person, but perhaps through a cryptic social media post. A vague announcement, or even an old post resurfacing at the worst possible time. One of the most troublesome developments is Sherry reopening unresolved issues. Her public pregnancy announcement after splitting from Steve, the speculation surrounding the child's identity, and the wave of post-divorce rumors that once rocked the fan community, all of it is now being rehashed, gossiped about, and blown out of proportion. No one knows if Sherry's actions are deliberate or accidental, but one thing is clear, they've turned both Steve and Michelle into victims of a noisy, inescapable past. Steve, once the epitome of calm and strength in the eyes of daytime TV viewers, is now dealing with a severe emotional shock. On what should have been a defining day in his life, he found himself losing control, powerless as Michelle, the woman he loves, got dragged into a media and public frenzy he had once vowed never to let happen again. Michelle, a private person with no experience in the spotlight, has now become the most talked about name after the event, solely due to her connection to a man whose previous marriage ended with so much noise. To make things worse, guests at the engagement, close friends, colleagues, even family, couldn't help but feel the discomfort. Some left early, others whispered behind backs. And the media didn't miss a beat in turning the intimate gathering into a headline-grabbing scandal. What was meant to be a warm, private celebration quickly became the center of gossip, more dramatic than many of the storylines Steve had acted in on General Hospital. And that's what hurt Steve the most. Realizing that real life is no longer a place where he can find peace. One of the new insanities he's facing is the painful truth that, despite his efforts to stay away from scandal and avoid gossip, just one slip, one thing out of his control, can destroy everything. Steve once believed that silence and discretion would help him and Michelle build a strong foundation. But reality is proving the opposite. When you're a celebrity, nothing truly stays private. The aftermath of the ceremony has left a trail of unresolved complications. Michelle feels deeply hurt, not just by the ruined engagement, but because she feels pushed out of the safe space Steve once promised to protect. She's beginning to question whether she can truly live in a world where every step is analyzed, every relationship dissected, and every joy potentially turned into social media entertainment. As for Steve, he now faces a painful choice. Hold on to this relationship and face the storm with Michelle, or let go again, this time, to protect the woman he loves from the very world that once tore apart his first marriage. A moment meant to mark the happiest day of their love story has now become a symbol of chaos, the return of past ghosts, and an uncertain future. And for Steve Burton, once a screen symbol of resilience, this may be his weakest moment yet. Because in real life, heroes don't always win. They don't always get to protect what matters most. Steve Burton's real life, forever tied to the image of Jason Morgan, the cold, loyal, and silent protector on General Hospital, is now caught in a swirling drama that feels just as intense and unpredictable as the episodes he used to film. As Steve tries to rebuild his life post-divorce with Sherry Burton and find peace with his new girlfriend Michelle Lundstrom, a storm from the past is suddenly back. Sherry, once seen as the calm behind Steve's storm, is now acting in ways no one expected. She appears to be preparing to reveal Steve's most personal secrets, turning the once hidden past into the epicenter of a media quake. At first, many assumed she'd quietly step back, like she did after the scandal surrounding her sudden pregnancy post-divorce. But the truth is proving otherwise. She's no longer the passive figure in tabloid headlines. Sherry has changed, or rather, she's reclaiming control of her narrative. And she's doing it in the one way the media can't ignore, by exposing the truth about Steve. Through cryptic social posts, old memory-filled photos, and subtle interactions with fans, Sherry is crafting a new portrait of Steve, no longer the calm, perfect man the audience once admired, but someone with a hidden dark side, secrets buried deep, and perhaps even disturbing truths that make people question who he really is. One of the biggest potential bombshells Sherry could drop at any moment is a truth Steve desperately wants to keep hidden. Fans can feel it, through her perfectly timed appearance during Steve and Michelle's engagement, her commentary on the fakeness of the entertainment industry, and her brief but pointed social media remarks that stir the pot. She doesn't have to name names, everyone knows exactly who she's talking about. And that leads to one of the most alarming shifts in Steve Burton's personal life. He once believed that by staying silent and keeping Michelle out of the public eye, he could protect her from the judgment, criticism, and chaos that once destroyed his marriage. But now that Sherry is beginning to reveal what she calls the truths that need to be told, Steve can no longer protect anything, not even Michelle. Michelle, a woman outside the entertainment world who only ever wanted to love quietly, is now facing a storm she was never trained to weather. The scrutiny, the gossip, the cruel online comments are now aimed at her. People ask her what she thinks about Steve's past, whether she knew who she was dating, the man accused of this or that. Everything Michelle once feared, becoming part of the celebrity whirlwind, is now real. And she feels like she's being pushed to her limit. Meanwhile, Steve is cornered. Years of carefully maintaining his image, building respect from fans, colleagues, and the media, now hanging by a thread. If Sherry really does release hard evidence, old texts, emails, photos, or even audio recordings of arguments or confessions, this won't be a private matter anymore. It could become a full-blown scandal that jeopardizes his career on General Hospital and future projects. One of the new insanities taking shape is how Sherry is weaponizing her own pain to dismantle Steve's public image. And ironically, Steve, who once portrayed a hero who never let emotions cloud his logic, is now emotionally shaken, unstable, and completely losing control of his own narrative. The media is circling. Tabloids are racing to collect every crumb from both sides. Fans are split down the middle, some defending Steve and accusing Sherry of not letting go, others believing Steve's silence proves he's hiding something. This story is inching closer to its tipping point, where everything could collapse with a single tweet, a photo, or an explosive interview. And the most heartbreaking part? No matter who's right or wrong, the one most hurt might be the very person Steve's trying so hard to protect, Michelle. It's like a real-life script being written day by day. And the audience is no longer just watching a daytime soap, they're witnessing the unraveling of a man once thought to be unshakable, now struggling to hold on to what little piece is left in his shattered world. Jason is entering a new dark chapter of his life, facing a growing sense of dread, one that stems not from an enemy, but from someone who was once considered an ally, a brother, Drew. Their relationship has never been simple, but recently, things have grown suffocatingly complicated. Drew is no longer the man searching for lost memories in a haze of confusion. He's becoming an ideal figure in the eyes of people Jason once thought would always belong to his world. Drew doesn't have to try too hard, yet he's earning trust, admiration, even affection from those Jason once held close, and that is forcing Jason to reevaluate everything, his role, his place, and even who he is. What unsettles Jason most isn't that Drew is gaining favor with others, it's that Jason is being pushed out of the inner circle, little by little, without anyone even noticing. Drew shows up at the right time, says all the right things, remains calm, reliable, and most of all, he shares himself, something Jason never learned to do. Drew is now gaining trust in places where Jason once reigned through silence and decisive action. This shift doesn't come from betrayal, but from the natural passage of time, and that's what makes it all the more terrifying for Jason. He can't stop it with his fists. He can't threaten his way back into his place. Everything is changing quietly, like the world is slowly phasing him out without a trace. Willow is where Jason feels this change most deeply. She no longer turns to him like she used to. The look of trust in her eyes, the quiet questions, the unspoken closeness, they're gone. Now, when something happens, the first person she calls is Drew. And just as Jason tries to close the distance, to prove he's still the one who can protect her from everything, devastating news hits. Nellie is back. A name thought to be erased from the memory of Port Charles now echoes again, like a chilling warning. Nellie's return isn't just a surprise, it's a nightmare becoming reality, especially for Willow, who was deeply hurt by her. For Jason, her return isn't merely the resurgence of an old enemy, it's a symbol of unresolved past wounds, a scar torn open before it could heal, and worse, a threat to everything he's trying to rebuild. Jason knows better than anyone how manipulative Nellie can be. She's capable of turning doubt and cracks in relationships into weapons. This time, she holds another advantage. Willow's internal turmoil, and the growing distance between her and Jason. It's the perfect time for Nellie to strike. Jason knows he can't let things spiral out of control. He starts taking action, silently watching, gathering intel. But what tortures him most is this: he's no longer sure he even has a place in Willow's life to protect her. Drew is there, every moment. Every breath. Drew listens. Drew is present. And Jason, the man who once would have sacrificed everything for the people he loves, is now standing on the sidelines, watching as an uninvited outsider. The danger Jason faces now isn't from a gun-wielding enemy, but from a silent shifting of loyalties around him. He's fighting not only against Nellie but against the invisible feeling that he's being replaced. Port Charles was once his stronghold, he was the pillar, the one people called when chaos erupted. Now, whenever something happens, the first name spoken is Drew's. The shift isn't loud, but it cuts deep. Jason feels himself being pushed away, from his family, from close relationships, from the image of the hero he built over the years. Nellie doesn't need to do much. She just needs to appear, drop a few ominous words, and let the instability in everyone else do the rest. Jason can feel the walls around him cracking. He sees Willow beginning to question everything. He sees Drew rebuilding what he once had. And most of all, he sees himself, the man who feared no one, now fearing the feeling of being forgotten. No one can predict what will happen when Nellie truly makes her move. But Jason knows time is running out. He must decide, fight for his place, for Willow's safety, and for himself, or accept that he's become a relic in a world that's moving on without him. And if he chooses to fight, this won't be a battle of bullets or brute force, it will be the bloodiest battle of all, the battle to reclaim trust, love, and his own identity. In the whirlwind of fear, rivalry, and the haunting return of the past, Jason is forced to face a brutal truth. Sometimes, the most terrifying man is not the one holding the gun, but the one who's lost everything. Jason is reaching a life-or-death turning point in his journey, where all the loss, pain, silence, and isolation of his past converge in a violent storm. Not in a shootout, nor a dangerous mission, but in the impending death of the woman who once was the last light anchoring him to his fragile humanity, Monica. Monica is not just a name in the Quartermain family tree. She is the only mother Jason ever truly had, one who saw the son she raised, loved, trusted, and forgave, even when his life took an unexpected, violent turn. Jason once severed all ties to his past, rejected his old name, his family legacy, but Monica never rejected him. When everyone else turned their backs, she waited. When he coldly walked away from the Quartermain mansion, she kept the door open. And now, Jason stands before a heartbreaking reality: Monica is dying. And he, the man who once could save the world, is powerless to save the one person who gave him life a second time through love. This is no ordinary loss. This is a soul-shattering blow to Jason's very core. Monica is the last living memory of his childhood, the last remnant of the life he once had before becoming Jason Morgan. Her death will bury the name, Jason Quartermain, forever. No one will call him that again. No one will remember the smart, science-loving boy who used to smile and study by the window. Only Jason Morgan remains, a cold warrior, without family, without bonds, and now, without a mother. And it is here, in this unbearable loss, that something shifts within Jason. The emotional dam cracks. He no longer stands stoically outside of his pain. He doesn't run from grief. He sits by Monica's bedside, silent, unable to hide the redness in his eyes, for once. Allowing himself to feel the full weight of the pain. In every grip of her hand, in every quiet moment, he seems to be saying goodbye to the part of himself he never allowed to live again. Monica's death isn't just the passing of a mother, it marks the beginning of a seismic shift in Jason's story. He can no longer live like a shadow. He can't continue as the silent protector who only exists for others and never for himself. He begins to look back on his life with deep reflection. What has he sacrificed? How many chances at love did he lose, just to become someone so strong no one dared to get close? Did he ever truly live? Or has he just existed, as a weapon, an enforcer, a hero without emotion? That question begins a new journey for Jason, one without gunfire or battle plans, but filled with fears he's never faced, the fear of being left behind, of not being loved. Of Monica's death tearing apart what's left of his soul. And from that, a new Jason begins to rise, not invincible, but a wounded man, seeking healing, rediscovering himself in the ashes of memory. Everyone around him begins to notice the change. Carly, strong and pragmatic as she is, can't hide her emotion watching Jason kneel silently by Monica's bed, saying nothing, doing nothing extra. But with tears glistening in his eyes. Drew, once dismissed as the replacement, now senses the deep void Jason is grappling with. Willow, teetering between tangled relationships, begins to realize Jason, the man she once thought untouchable, can hurt, can fall, and most importantly, can need forgiveness. In the storm of emotion, Jason begins to live differently. He doesn't just protect, he starts to share. He no longer stays silent, he begins to speak. He opens up to family, reconnects with Michael, finds common ground with Drew. And even looks Carly in the eye and, for the first time in years, asks her, "If I'm not as strong as I used to be, will you still stay?" That trembling, honest question is the clearest sign of the monumental emotional transformation taking place inside him. In grief, he is reborn. In loss, he finds the humanity that had been dormant in his heart for so long. And if Jason's story was once a journey of a cold warrior, it's now evolving into a quest to find his heart again, his family, and a life he once turned away from. Monica's death may be the end of an old chapter, but it is also the opening to a new one, where Jason is no longer an untouchable symbol, but a man of flesh and blood, with pain, with hope, and with a longing to truly live. And that, more than any explosion or battle, will be the greatest eruption audiences will ever witness in Jason's life, a resurrection born from the deepest loss. Steve is entering a tumultuous period not only in his personal life, but also in the way he is reshaping the fate of the legendary character he has been associated with for many years, Jason. When Jason Morgan returned to the General Hospital screen, fans expected a strong continuation, a new chapter full of drama and emotion. But behind the halo of that return, Steve himself is quietly preparing for a new calculation, a direction no one saw coming, and this is leading to one of the craziest waves Port Charles is about to face. The fact is that Steve is no longer in a stable position as before in the world of soap operas. He has been fired, left the set, quietly disappeared while the audience regretfully did not have time to say goodbye. And now, when he returns, he knows better than anyone, he cannot be the same person in the same outfit. Jason cannot return as a ghost repeating himself. Jason needs to be reinvented. Jason needs a new voice. And Steve, with all his experience, loss, and turmoil, is using his own life to reshape that character. But in this creation, a hidden danger is taking shape. Steve is putting it all on the line. He is not simply returning to a script, but influencing the construction and interpretation of Jason in a different way. A more vulnerable Jason. A Jason with a more visible past. A Jason who can straddle the line between good and evil. No longer acting on instinctive loyalty, but beginning to question the beliefs he once lived and died to protect. In the world of soap opera, where characters live on the loyalty of the audience, such a sudden change is both bold and risky. The uncertainty about Steve's future comes not from a lack of roles, but from the fact that he is choosing to walk a path that contradicts what the audience has come to expect. Those who loved Jason in the old mold, the cold, fearless, fiercely loyal warrior, might find it strange, even revolting, that Jason is now beginning to show more human frailties, deeper emotions, and buried doubts. But Steve seems to understand. If Jason doesn't change, the character will die, not physically, but spiritually. So Steve is taking a gamble, on the one hand, to keep Jason alive, and on the other hand, to assert that he is no longer the same actor repeating the past, but an artist willing to repaint the entire portrait of which he was once a part. But this also means he could be drawn into conflict with the producers, with die-hard fans, with the very people pulling the strings behind the scenes that he has no control over. The more Steve tries to steer Jason in a new direction, the more he drags himself into a crazy spiral, where every step could turn fatally wrong. Fans have seen the signs. Jason is no longer just a man of action. He's starting to feel lonely. He's starting to doubt the loyalty of those around him. He's starting to fear loss. And Steve is putting all his heart into making that fear the main ingredient for his next performance. In a town like Port Charles, where characters live in a fast-paced, thrilling rhythm, and can die at any moment, a character who thinks as much as Jason is an easy target, easy to destroy, but also has the potential to create one of the biggest psychological explosions in general hospital history. But it's all a double-edged sword. Because if Steve goes too far, if Jason loses the inherent character that the audience has come to love, he loses everything. The new madness here isn't just that Jason could die emotionally, but that Steve is also putting his career's future on the line. There's no longer a safe zone, no longer the protection of his old reputation. It's just him, and a choice. To move forward as a reborn human, or to collapse with reckless artistic decisions. In the chaos of Port Charles, Jason is changing. But behind the scenes, Steve is also struggling, with his past. With his old image, with his own shadow. And the outcome is still unknown. But one thing is certain, when an artist bets his soul, the story will never be the same. And this time, Steve isn't just rewriting Jason's fate, he's rewriting the very definition of who he once was.